Welcome back to Azure Security AZ500 series. And today we are going to talk about conditional access. Well, conditional access is an Azure AD feature that protects applications by requiring certain criteria to be met before access is granted. We have seen multi-factor authentication in previous video where we also gave the idea if we involve MFA with conditional access, it will improve the user experience. So these are the conditions that we were talking about there. Exactly does this mean? Well, for us to understand how conditional access works, let's review how normal application access works with Azure AD and then compare the process to how it works when we implement conditional access. Well, this is the diagram that I have borrowed from MS Google. Anyways, the point is this is the authentication process where conditional access is not in picture without CA, which is conditional access. So what is happening here? Step one, a user accesses an application that uses Azure AD as authentication. Step 2 and 3, the user client is redirected to Azure AD, which validates the first factor of authentication, the user's password. If MFA is required, MFA will also be verified. See? Discount, discount, discount. Now, step 4 and 5, following successful verification, the user's client is granted an access token for the application. So if you see, it is like pretty straightforward. User request goes for the validation, validation done, got the access. There is no condition, there is no situation anywhere. Now let's check this one. Access flow with conditional access. Now here we have applied some conditions, okay? Now a user access an application that uses Azure AD as identity provider, just like the previous diagram. In 2 and 3, exactly like the previous diagram, user is redirected to Azure AD for password validation. Now, step 4, following successful password verification, the request is evaluated using the configured conditional access policies right there. Okay, so password is fine, but we need to verify the conditions applied in the conditionals policy. We can have one or more conditional access policies configured. A conditional access policy is made up of two main parts, which is like a condition to match and control to apply. The conditions are based on the information signals relating to the specific authentication request. For example, user information, role assignment, user location, user device information, or client application, which the user is trying to access. And the control could be to allow access, block access, or require MFA if the defined conditions are matched in the authentication request. And step 5, 6, and 7, the result of conditional access policy evaluation is based on the user's client, right? So the point is, it is exactly the same till here, but these conditions are applied and Azure already has to validate with this condition. A very simple example is, let's take the user location. If user is accessing that particular application, not from Office, but from somewhere else, conditional access says, if it's not the Office network, then allow, but do the MFA. Require MFA. Allow, but do the MFA. Right? Or if there is some kind of issue with the sign in, then force to password reset, things like that. Conditions like that will come into the picture. Password wouldn't suffice the need, but the conditions would be the ultimate decision maker here. All right, well, now the concept is clear. Now let's see where we can use the common use cases. Well, requiring MFA, as I said in this video and in the previous video, for administrators only per application, only for access attempts from untrusted networks, things like that, right? Or blocking legacy authentication, requiring trusted location for MF registration, blocking access by location. Maybe some locations are not allowed, or it won't accept if people are accessing certain application from that location, requiring compliant device. Maybe you're using a mobile phone that needs to be compliant in the Intune, only then it would be allowed. Things like that. It's like general information. But this one is very important, legacy authentication. You gotta note this. Legacy authentication is a term used to describe authentication requests made from older Office clients. All right, and legacy authentication client pose a major security risk as they do not support MFA. An attacker could use legacy clients to bypass configured MFA policies. Okay, the best way to mitigate the risk is to block attempts from clients using legacy authentication. Now that we have some understanding of conditional access policies, let's look at how policies are evaluated if we have multiple conditions applied in policies. Now here we have a single condition applied, and if we have two condition applied, negative always wins because of the security reasons. So we'll come to that part later, but I know you guys understand that. So here the condition is member of HR, it should be using Windows OS or browser client, and controls are allowed. If these three conditions are met, then we will allow the access and access granted, because this person is HR group, Windows PC, and browser client. That's what they're using, she's using. Now, we added one more condition here. If the location is New York, block the access. Now, policy 1 is all matched. Policy 2 doesn't match. Positive, negative. Who's going to win? Negative is going to win. So, access blocked. Okay, so this is how the accesses are verified. Now, we must check certain best practices before we see that in our portal. So these are some best practices. As you can see from previous explanation, conditional access is a powerful feature. So we gotta know the best practices before we mess it up or block the entire environment, right? So the very first is, do not use the block access control for any policy that includes all users or all application. This configuration blocks access to your entire organization, and it is not a good idea. Avoid the use of the required domain join or require compliant devices access controls for any policy that includes all users or all application. Focus is all users or all application. Again, the same logic applies here. If you are yet to have a domain join device or a compliant device in your org, this will lock everyone out. Now, before configuring conditional access policies, it is highly recommended to create 2 emergency access or break glass accounts that you can use to roll back an organization-wide misconfiguration. We always have these kind of precautions in place. The 2 emergency accounts should be excluded from conditional access policies that block access or that require further compliance. Yes, you do have an option to exclude certain things, like we also have in Azure policies. Similarly, we have in conditional access, we can exclude the certain IP address, or we can exclude certain client, things like that. Now, we can also use the what if tool, just like we have in PowerShell, right, to test the policies before enabling them. And finally, roll out new policies in phases. It is recommended to have a group of users that can act as your pilot group to evaluate the impact before rolling out to the wider organization. This way you can verify that your policies behave as expected. Now let's quickly go ahead and see these things in portal. Where is my portal? Well, there we go. This is my portal. As you can see, to go here and Azure Active Directory, it's the AD module. So you're always going to hit this blade first and then come to the security. And under security, we have so many options under manage, but we need to hit the conditional access under protect. If you hit the conditional access under protect, here you're going to define the conditions and things like that. Of course, it requires a license because it is an advanced set of feature and you're going to pay for it. So I don't have that much with me, so I have captured some screenshots to show you. You know how to reach there. Now, once you hit the conditional access, this is the a blade where you have to define the conditions. Now you need to give the name for your policy. Then you have to assign to a user, specific user or groups. Then you need to select for which you are applying the conditional access. For example, you chose the Azure Management Portal. So that's what you can select here. Now under conditions, we have to select the conditions that we want to be verified before providing the access. Yes, user risk, consign risk belongs to the Azure AD identity protection. If we integrate identity protection, we would have the information of these two, which comes from Azure AD identity protection, which is an amazing and great feature. We'll definitely gonna explore it in upcoming videos. But here we can choose device platform as well. Any device or select a device, or you can exclude some devices. You can select locations as well. So these are the conditions. We can mix and match as per a requirement. And another part is access control. So we discussed during the this video, conditional access consists of two parts: conditions to match and control to apply. Right? This is conditions to match. These are the conditions that we need to select as per our requirement, and control to apply. What is control? Providing access or denying access. You can block the access or you can grant the access. If you're granting access, you can have another condition in place, require MFA, or require device to be marked as compliant, or hybrid AD joined, or require password change, require app protection policy, things like that. So you can have conditions applied to give the access. But again, if your condition is matching certain situations, you want them to go through MFA or certain other conditions just to be secure and taking another precautions. Nobody will mess with your identities because that's very important. Nobody wants their name in the newspaper next day and screw the entire business. Well, thank you for watching and you guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.